Hey guys, good morning. Happy Thursday. It's Daryl here. It is 9 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, if my camera fogs up a little bit, that's because it was just in the snow. I was going to shoot a video while I was out on my walk. It is beautiful up on top of this dam, a couple thousand feet up with snow-covered mountains all around. So I set up my tripod and I didn't take into account how freaking windy it was up there. And I stood back and started talking, and the wind blew the tripod on down the hill into the snowbank, and my camera got all covered in snow. So if it gets a little foggy, that's why. Okay, let's get into it. Hey, second of all, I really appreciate all of you guys, your well wishes, everything that I talked about in the last video. It is insane. It's craziness, man. But it's not going to keep me down. You know, stuff happens in this life, and you got to roll with the punches. You know, life gives you lemons, make lemonade, man. That's it. All right, let's get right into it. I'll probably talk, I'm probably going to mention this in my videos coming up because it's just, it's part of my outlook on life. But let's get into it. All right, Axios, the left-wing media outlet, similar to Politico, they did a poll talking about the newer members of Congress, like McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene, is that it? Mitch McConnell and Liz Cheney. I'll put the link down below. It's Axios. Like I said, the link's going to be right down below, so you can see this poll for yourself. And it's very troubling. There's definitely, they interviewed Republicans, just Republicans in general, and it's very troubling as there's obviously a lot more support for the Patriot Party, the Trumpers. I got to be careful with my wording here. That letter of the alphabet, those believers. It really looks like the Republican Party is in a tear right now. If it's going to go down the road with traditional values back like with Reagan and small government, the traditional GOP, or is it going to branch off into this anti-democracy road of Trumpism? And this is troubling. Now, another thing is it just came out that the military is calling today or the next week or so a stand down period. This is going to be a thing you guys are going to hear more about. The period, it's called stand down. And they're specifically going to look through the members of the military to see if there's connections with far right groups. Because this is a problem. That's one of the only things, as I talked about in other videos, like with Myanmar, Burma, one of the only things that pretty much stopped Trump from succeeding in a coup was that he didn't have the backing of the military. So I think that the military now is going to look through its ranks and make sure that there aren't traitors. Basically, I know there's the Republicans and Trump supporters out there that would call them real patriots. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that right now. All right, what is this all about? I think it doesn't come down a lot to the conspiracy theories. It comes down to what they call the big lie. Now, let's talk about that for a second. I'm confused here. Maybe you guys can help me out because I think people are using this in two different ways, this term, the big lie. I think Trump supporters are calling it the big lie because they're saying that Biden stole the election, and therefore that's the big lie. And people like me and the normal people, the majority, are looking at it as Trump's lying about voter fraud. That's the big lie. Unless I'm misunderstanding this, because there's a lot of times I've seen this being used both ways. Both sides are calling something the big lie, but they're on opposite sides of the fence. All right, let's talk about this. This is what it comes down to. I think the damage that Donald Trump did to our country, to our democracy, we're just beginning to see the cracks, and it's going to get the damage is going to get worse exponentially. Truly, I think we're just beginning to see the damage. because of the trust that was taken away in the voting in our democracy. A lot of this goes back to COVID-19 and the virus. Now, when this first started, I could kind of understand what Trump supporters hailed Donald Trump as his economy. That was his saving grace. With all of the bad crap that he put out there, his nicknames, his Twitter stuff, his ridiculous spelling and racism and all of it. The one thing that people that kind of worked to save him was the economy. And when COVID-19 broke out, you could see this panic in the Trump supporters because they knew they could see what was going to happen. So I think there was two paths we could have gone down. We could have gone down the path of telling the truth. And like I've said before, Donald Trump could have come out of this being one of the best presidents ever if he had handled this the right way. If he had handled this with truth and honesty and put more trust and belief into science and the doctors and the people around him. But because of the person he is, it all goes back to never admitting that he is wrong. It's like a driver getting lost and not stopping to ask for directions and just getting more lost and more lost. That is Donald Trump. That is all the Trumpers and Trump supporters and the whole Patriot Party stuff. Is they have this machismo, this false machoism about them, where they're never wrong, they never say they're sorry, they never admit to defeat, and they just get further and further and more off from the truth, from where the right path, from the true destination. You saw this with Trump, with him trying to hide, trying to save the public from panic, and plus on top of that, I think it was a lazy man's way out. Just deny it, pretend it's not happening, and push forward and go for this herd immunity thing, because that would require the least amount from him. And that's the path he was going to go down, even though it would have required the death of millions of Americans. He could have came out of this being one of the best presidents ever, but he didn't. And I think the whole time, as this pandemic went on, Trump supporters panicked because they saw the future. They saw Donald Trump losing the election because of this, not because of the virus, not because of COVID-19, not because of China, but because of the way he responded to it. Because he ignored it. He didn't ask for help. He didn't rely on the people around him. He didn't rely on science. He relied on misinformation and denial. A typical false machoism. This is one thing I've never had a problem admitting I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot. You learn from your mistakes. I've never had a problem admitting that I'm lost. I'd much rather stop and ask for directions than get more lost. I don't see anything unmanly about getting lost. I don't even get that. But let's not get off the track. And I think, so this COVID-19 thing, I think Trump supporters, being the grievous victimhood party, they look at this as being unfair, that the COVID-19 and the virus kind of stole this re-election from them. I really think in the back of their heads, that's the way they see this. And that's what they're really calling this, as unfair or fraudulent election. Because COVID-19 kind of snatched away Trump's re-election right out of his hands. No, it didn't snatch it out of his hands. It wasn't China. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't the masks. It was Trump's mishandling of the pandemic that ruined it. He ruined it for himself because he took the easy way out, and because he relied on misinformation by just covering his eyes and pretending it wasn't there. I think that's what Trump supporters, they really have this grievance that the election was rightfully theirs. I think they're not saying it, but when they say that it was a fraudulent election, that's really at the bottom, in the back of their head, is what they're thinking, is they should have won this election. If not for that COVID, for that Kung flu, as they call it, or whatever. And they don't admit that it's just the way he handled it. He could have come out of this being one of the best presidents of the United States ever had, if he truly handled this the best that a human being could. If he shined when it came down to it, if he was a man that could have handled this office, he could have shined during this last month, and he didn't. And he lost the election. And I think Trump supporters look at that as somehow it's being stolen from him. And I think that's why they have this grievance that it was a fraudulent election. Even though they don't come out and say this, I think that's the base of it right there, the root of it. I think a lot of them don't believe the Dominion stuff. They don't believe well, maybe in the back of their head they do, but it comes down to this last year, and they feel that it was snatched out of there. It was rightfully his. I think that's what it comes down to. And I think it's pushing the party towards extremism. And it's going to take months and years to see the damage that this Trump's rhetoric, his narcissistic rhetoric of never admitting defeat, of admitting that, trying to insist that he was wrong and this was stolen from him, and how much damage that did to the foundation of this country. Like I said, I think it's not going to go away anytime soon. I think we're just beginning to discover the damage. I think it goes a lot deeper than any of us could ever imagine, and it's going to be with us for a long time to come. We're going to have a long time patching up the cracks on this, the foundation of our democracy, to really put a fine point on it. All right, I'll be back later with another video. You guys have a great Thursday.